Hello and welcome to my Tokyo kitchen. I'm Betsy and I'm here for National Azabu's YouTube channel. Today we will be making homemade stuffing for the holidays. So for my homemade stuffing, we are going to need a lot of variety of breads. You can use croissants, you can use whole wheat bread, you can use white bread, you can use white rustic bread. You can also use cornbread, which I also added to my stuffing, and I'm using Bob's Red Mill cornbread with the recipe on the back. Easy to make and delicious to eat. We're also going to use dried cranberries at the end to give the stuffing a nice pop. You're going to need some pepper, fresh milled pepper, and Maldon salt that I love to use, as well as sweet Sapporo butter. You can use any butter. 2 eggs we're going to use. We're going to chop a tablespoon of thyme and 1 to 2 tablespoons of sage. We're also going to use a whole onion chopped and 2 of the celery ribs, 2 or 3, it's up to you. And we're also going to use the canned chicken broth, but you can of course make your own chicken broth, homemade chicken soup, and or homemade turkey broth. And I should also add that in my stuffing I used caramelized onions, and I'll explain to you how I did that when we get going. Okay, so the first thing you're going to do is take all your bread and you're going to lay it out on probably two sheets, baking sheets, so that they have a chance to dry out. It'll take up to 2 days for fresh bread to dry out on its own on these sheets. And the cornbread that I made, I just wanted to give you guys a sample of how I dried it out. I cut it into thin slices, put it on the cookie sheet along with all the other bread, it doesn't matter. And I actually used the oven. I turned it on to 130 degrees, in there for upwards of 45 minutes to an hour. So the first thing we do is we're going to saute the onions and the celery. And if I may, one of the things that I suggest at the bottom of this recipe is to make caramelized onions, because that'll really give your stuffing some really excellent flavor. So in order to caramelize the onions, I had to start very early because it takes a good hour to really get the caramelization of your onions. You're going to slice 3 or 4 onions very thin, and use 1 or 2 tablespoons of butter and probably 1 tablespoon of olive oil and some Maldon salt. And you're going to put it on medium-low heat, and it's going to cook slowly and for over an hour to get to this consistency. But the flavor in this is really excellent. It's almost like an onion jam. To medium-high heat. I'm going to take 5 to 6 tablespoons of butter, and I'm going to eyeball it because you don't need to be exact. It's your taste, but you'll also understand once your bread is really stale, you're going to need moisture along with your chicken stock. Is the butter that helps the bread to get flavor and soft. So when the bread is nice and stale, it really soaks up all the juices of the chicken stock and the butter and the onion and the celery, and it gets really great flavor. That's why you want stale bread. So you're going to let your butter, so we're going to start with the celery. You can start with the celery or onions because you're going to quickly put the onions in along with the celery. I'm going to take half of these onions because I'm also using the caramelized onions. So to have 2 different types of onions is also going to give you more depth to the taste of your stuffing. And you're going to let this saute. I'm going to add a little more butter and some more of the celery once this gets going. And it's going to saute for a good 6 or 7 minutes. As it starts to saute, when the butter is melted, you're also going to start adding your seasoning. I'm going to take another little patch of butter here to make sure this has enough moisture. And if you don't want to use just butter, it is the holidays, you can also use olive oil. So as the celery and the onion saute with the butter, we're going to add some seasoning. We're going to add some salt, some Maldon salt, sprinkled throughout. And it's to your taste, so don't be afraid to add a little or a lot depending on how you like your spices. Some pepper goes in, and now it's getting nice and sauteed, coming together. I can smell it. I love the smell of butter with onion and celery sauteing. Stuffing is really, really easy, I gotta say, homemade stuffing. So this is gonna get nice and translucent when it gets to a good point being sauteed. Again, it's a good 6 to 7, 8 minutes depending on your stovetop. But what we're gonna do is we're gonna add the caramelized onions that we made earlier. Just making sure this is all incorporated, all mixed together. We're gonna add the thyme. We're also going to add the sage and continue to mix it up. A little more Maldon salt. You never have enough Maldon salt in your stuffing or anywhere. Okay, because the bread is really dry, we're going to start adding this into the mixture. And once we get, I've already got a number of torn pieces. You're just going to tear them apart. Very rough. It doesn't matter. You throw them in, some chicken stock. And I took the cans and put them in here because it was easier for me to pour. You're gonna add a little stock at a time. And you're gonna continue to add pieces of the bread. Mix it around. And again, the stale bread allows the juices of the chicken stock and the butter. Okay, you're going to continue to give a little more moisture to the bread. We still haven't used all this was 2 cans of the chicken stock, by the way. Here we go, and the last thing that we're going to put in before we take it off the heat for the egg are the cranberries. Beautiful dried cranberries. Okay, so now we're going to take it off the heat. We're going to turn off the stovetop. We're going to mix this really well one more time. So we're off the heat now. We're going to take the egg and we're going to beat it. These are 2 eggs that we're beating. And we're going to add it. And this will help seal the moisture when we put the stuffing into the oven to bake. So we're going to take our glass dish or your ceramic dish, whatever you have that you're going to put into the oven, and you're going to put a little butter on the bottom so that it has a little coating, and then we're going to put all the stuffing in. So what we're going to do here, because we're also in the holiday season, is add a little more butter for the cooking, to cook into it, and it'll help also the top to crisp up. So we're ready to put the stuffing in the oven. We've got it in our glass pan, and we have the oven on at 190 degrees, and we're ready to roast the stuffing. I'm going to put my timer on for about 30 minutes, and you're going to watch it, and if it gets too dry or you think it looks like it's getting dry, you can always cover it with tin foil on the top. At the end, you're going to definitely take the tin foil off. You're going to put a little butter on the top, regardless of whether you put tin foil on it or not. You're going to let the top get nice and crispy, which is what we want. So the stuffing underneath is going to be nice and moist, and the top's going to be nice and crispy, and it's all going to be delicious. Stuffing right out of your oven onto your holiday table is the best way to serve it. It'll be nice and moist and ready to eat, along with all your other trimmings. I just wanted to add that you can make stuffing whatever way you want to make it yours. You can add more spice, you can add sausage, you can add bacon, or you can add chestnuts. Whatever you want to do to make your stuffing work with what you're serving for your holiday meal is the best for you. Thanks for joining me today for making homemade stuffing.